Hello everyone, peace be upon you. Before we begin, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe, and stay with me until the end of the story. Also, leave a comment telling me which city and country you're watching from. I'd love to see how far my story has reached. For those of you who have already subscribed, I sincerely wish you good health, ease in all your affairs, abundant blessings, and may all your hopes and dreams come true. Amen. Now, let's begin the story. Ethan Walker had a habit of noticing what other people stepped over. At Fort Falcon Air Base in the Sonoran Desert, the hangar was a constant thrum, tool carts rolling, compressors hissing, rotor blades looming like dark crosses above the concrete. He moved through it with a clipboard tucked under his arm, eyes cutting across rivets, safety wire, and hydraulic lines as if each one had something to say. Some guys called him Checklist Walker. He didn't bother correcting them. The AH-64E Guardian parked in Bay 3 was his responsibility tonight, and responsibility was the only thing that let him sleep. He clicked on his inspection light and slid to a knee beneath the fuselage. The floor was clean, but there it was anyway, a thin crescent of sheen near the main servo line. Not a puddle. Not dramatic. Just a suggestion. He touched a fingertip to it, rubbed, and felt the slip. Hydraulic fluid, not fresh, not old, something in between. He checked torque stripes, fittings, clamps, and the logbook entries for the past week. 2 minor leak notes from different shifts, both closed as no fault found. He didn't like that. Above him, the Guardian loomed quiet, panels open, safety pins bright red against flat olive skins. A row of 4 more Guardians waited down the line. 5 birds were scheduled for a dawn formation hop, 44 personnel between pilots and crew. He could hear the cadence of it already: start, spool, taxi, lift, pivot to the ridgeline, push north to the range. All of it depended on small things doing exactly what they were supposed to do. He stood, wiped his hands, and glanced across the floor. Master Sergeant Mark Ellison was in the glass-walled office, arms folded, watching the whiteboard schedule. Ellison liked clean lines and on-time launches. He liked numbers that behaved. Ethan liked proof. He stepped inside, laid the logbook down, and kept his voice even. "I've got a seep at Bay 3, main servo line. It's faint, but the same tail had 2 closes this week." Ellison didn't look up right away. "We replaced that line 3 days ago. It passed. Don't hold up a 5 ship for a smudge." Ethan nodded once. "I want another pressure check tonight. I'll document it and be quick." Ellison exhaled, signed the form with a short stroke, and waved him out. Back on the floor, Ethan fitted a gauge, bled the air, and watched the needle climb. It steadied, then tremored a hair at a cyclic input he didn't like. Not a spike, not a drop. A pulse. He logged it, snapped photos, traced the hose back to the block, and checked the lot code stamped along the braid. The number matched 2 other birds in the line. That tightened something in his chest. He pulled the other logbooks, cross-referenced the same "no fault found" notes, and found the same lot. He didn't write anything dramatic. He wrote what he saw, when he saw it, which fitting he touched, which torque stripe lined, which reading moved. Outside, the desert light slid from orange to slate. Captain Jessica Reed crossed the threshold in her flight suit, helmet bag on her shoulder, easy stride that said she trusted her aircraft because she trusted the people who touched it. Lieutenant Ryan Collins followed with a grin that disappeared when he caught Ethan's face. "Long night?" Ethan kept it simple. "Just making sure you get a boring morning." Reed gave him a nod that meant she'd heard that line before, then headed to ops for the final brief. The hangar thinned after chow. Music from somebody's speaker died out. A forklift beeped twice and went quiet. Ethan stayed with Bay 3, then walked the other 2 Guardians with the same lot code, light in one hand, pen in the other, feeling for heat, watching for the faintest halo at a crimp or ferrule. He found nothing he could circle in red, and that bothered him more than a clear break would have. An hour later he sat on a crate, the clipboard across his knees, the numbers lined up, the pictures time-stamped, the patterns sitting there without drama but without comfort. 5 birds at first light. 44 souls. If he was wrong, he'd be the guy who cried wolf on a tight schedule. If he was right and stayed quiet, he knew exactly how the failure would look: a sudden yaw, a collective that doesn't answer, a spiral no one recovers from. He stood, closed the last panel, and looked through the office glass at the whiteboard again. Ellison had gone. The lights were low. The desert wind pushed a ribbon of dust under the hangar door and it curled around his boots. He wrote one more line in the remarks block, lot numbers, prior closes, micropulse under load, and signed it. Then he set the clipboard down, picked it back up, and headed for the ops building. If someone had to be annoyed, let it be tonight, not written on a memorial wall tomorrow morning. So he pushed through the ops building door, that thought still hard in his chest: better someone be annoyed tonight than a name added to a wall by morning. The corridor smelled like coffee and dry paper. A laminated sortie board glowed under fluorescent light. Ethan walked straight to the duty desk and set his clipboard down. "I need a quick eyes-on for a maintenance risk on Bay 3 and 2 other tails with the same lot number," he said, steady and plain. The sergeant on duty glanced at the clock, then at Ethan's notes, then reached for the phone. 30 seconds later, Ellison filled the doorway with that squared-off posture he used when he was done entertaining debate. "You already got my signature," Ellison said, voice flat. "I did. Now I've got a pattern," Ethan answered. "Same hose batch. 2 prior closes as no fault. I've got a micropulse on the gauge under cyclic. It's not nothing." Ellison flipped through the photos without really looking. "We're 5 birds at each hour. You're not grounding half the line on a hunch. Button it up, annotate, and move. It's not a hunch. It's a trend with numbers," Ethan said. He kept his tone level. "Give me 30 minutes for an additional pressure profile with a second gauge and one more set of eyes." Ellison's jaw clicked. He glanced at the clock again. 15. "And you don't slow the brief." Ethan took the win, small as it was. Back in the hangar he clipped a second gauge, ran a controlled sweep with a tech from Knights, called out increments, logged each response. Twice the needle shivered at the same input. Not a runaway, not a leak down, but repeatable. He printed the plots, circled the lot code, stapled the photos. The tech blew out his cheeks. "Feels spicy," the kid said. "But I don't see drip." "That's the point," Ethan said. "It's quiet until it isn't." He carried the packet back to ops. Ellison didn't pick it up. "You did your 15. We're proceeding. If it burps in taxi, we'll catch it." Ethan stared at the packet, then at the man. There was nothing left to say in that room. He signed the log, wrote, "Operator informed," and stepped outside into the pre-dawn chill. The desert was a dark slate, stars going soft, a thin band of orange building on the horizon. Hangar doors groaned open. Ground crews rolled nitrogen carts and power units. The Guardians sat in a row, noses forward, canopies beating with dew. Reed came out of the brief with Collins, both of them scanning the line like they always did, a quick gut check before they trusted any board. She caught Ethan's eye. "We good?" she asked. "We're close," he said. He could have handed her the packet right there. Chain of command tugged at him like a strap. He swallowed it. "I'd like you to watch your servo indications on run-up. If you see chatter, call it." Reed held his look a second, reading the edges. "Copy." She moved on. Collins gave a small nod and followed her to their bird. APU shriek rose, then the heavy whump-whump of blades taking a bite of air. The first Guardian wound up clean. The second, too. Ethan stood at the line, headset on, eyes locked on Bay 3. He watched the crew chief's hand signals, the pilot scan, the torque, the temps. The needle that had twitched on his bench stayed smooth here, like a poker face. He felt the wrong kind of relief, the kind that makes you doubt your own notes. He checked his watch. 10 minutes to taxi. Ellison stepped beside him, hands in pockets. "See? Clean," he said. Ethan didn't answer. He thought about the two other tails with the same stamp, about the soft closes in the logs, about how a part can behave at idle and fail under load at altitude. He pictured the ridge line north of the base, the turn-in point, the moment all 5 ships would be nose to tail in a tight bracket. If a line let go there, one machine wouldn't just be in trouble. The whole stack would be inside the same sky. He opened the packet one more time, looked at the plots, at his own handwriting. The doubt didn't move. The clock did. The tower called step and taxi. Crews pulled pins. Wheel chocks came up. White wands cut clean arcs through the dim. Reed's rotor blurred into a disk. Bay 3's blades followed, steady, lying to everyone. Ethan felt the decision before he named it. He pulled his headset, shoved the packet under his arm, and started walking fast, then running, boots slapping concrete. The apron lights threw long stripes across the tarmac. Ground guys turned to look. He raised his voice, then raised it more, pushing air out of his chest like it mattered, because it did. "Captain. Captain Reed." No one heard him over the rotors. He kept going. If protocol was a wall, he would take the hit. Better a reprimand than a condolence letter. He cut across the nose of Bay 3, caught the crew chief's eye, pointed hard at the cockpit, then at his packet, then made the cut sign with his hand, once, twice, 3 times, not stopping until someone inside finally turned their head, and Reed's eyes locked on him through the canopy. He held the packet up high, then jabbed his thumb down, cut it. For a beat she didn't move. Then her gloved hand lifted, 2 fingers flicked, and the crew chief snapped his wands horizontal. The rotor disc wound down, noise peeling back in a slow metallic sigh. Collins leaned toward the glass, reading Ethan's face. Reed cracked the canopy. "What is it?" Her voice came clipped over the intercom. "Servo line, Bay 3, Ethan said, climbing the ladder, breath tight. He slid the packet across the sill. "Same lot on 2 other tails. I've got repeatable micropulse under cyclic. Prior closes marked no fault. If it lets go in the break at the ridge, you won't have time." She scanned the photos, the circled lot code, the plots with timestamps. It took maybe 6 seconds for skepticism to leave her eyes. "Tower, Guardian 2, she keyed, tone changing. Hold taxi. Repeat, hold. We need maintenance verification on 3, possibly 2 and 4. Stand by." The ramp paused like a movie frame. The other rotors kept turning, but the wand stopped moving. Ellison was there in under a minute, jaw set. "Captain, with respect, you don't call a hold on a line note. We have 4 green and 1 pending." Reed didn't blink. "I'm not lifting a formation with a known trend on a primary control. You want it on tape or you want it handled?" She handed him the packet. "Your sergeant brought me evidence. We check." Ellison's stare slid to Ethan. "You went around me." "I followed the risk," Ethan said. "It led here." The base ops chief arrived with a headset and a frown, followed by 2 civilians from engineering and a QA NCO with a Pelican case full of gauges. The ops chief listened to Reed for 20 seconds, read the lot code, and nodded once. "All right. Guardian elements hold position. Power at ground idle. Maintenance control has the lead. If we need to scrub, we scrub." They rolled a stand under Bay 3 and popped the panel. The QA NCO clipped his calibrated gauge, called out, "Ready for sweep." Ethan stood opposite him, hands steady, eyes on the needle. The pilot in the seat ran the inputs by the book. At 68% torque, the trace twitched, a thin stutter on an otherwise flat line. The QANCO frowned, tapped the glass, ran it again. Same spot. Same twitch. He glanced at Ellison. That's not noise. Could be harness, Ellison tried. Not with this repeat, the QANCO said. He leaned in, ran a thermal camera down the hose, paused at the ferrule where the lot stamp lived. There. Heat bloom at the crimp under load. It's subtle, but it's there. Engineering slid a borescope in, angled, and froze the frame. Micro crack at the crimp seat, barely a hair, just enough to sing under pressure. The civilian exhaled. Batch defect is plausible. We've seen similar in other programs when the die wears. If 2 more tails carry this lot, they're at risk. Reed keyed up again. Tower, confirm full stop for Guardian flight. Request ramp shutdown for maintenance action on 3, inspection on 2 and 4, batch trace on the rest. The answer came back tight and final, copy full stop. All Guardian elements safe aircraft. Exercise on hold. The rotors ticked to a halt one by one. The air changed. The rush drained out of the morning, replaced by that odd quiet you only hear after big machines go still. Collins climbed down, helmet under his arm. What do you need from us? He asked. 10 minutes to cool, then we'll pull the line, Ethan said. He didn't raise his voice or victory lap. He was already thinking 2 steps out, part availability, serial trace, which birds shared the stamp, how many spares in the cage. He keyed maintenance control. Request immediate issue of AH-64E main servo line, lot different from 7K-214. Need 3 on hand. Opening discrepancy write-ups now. Ellison rubbed his temple, the fight gone from his shoulders. I'll notify group, he said, voice lower. He looked at Ethan like he was seeing him for the first time. Next time you bring me this, don't wait for the runway. Wasn't waiting, Ethan said. I was documenting. The ops chief gathered the pilots. Look, nobody's losing face here. We're going to make this right, then we'll fly it when it's safe. Reed's gaze stayed on Ethan's clipboard. You said 2 and 4 share the lot. They do, he said. I'll verify the stamp on the braid and the packing slip. We'll scope both. If they're clean, we log and release. If they're not, we swap. The sun finally cleared the hangar roof and threw a hard line of gold across the floor. Techs moved with purpose, not panic. Panels off. Safety tags hung. The first defective hose came free with a reluctant hiss. The crimp told the story in plain metal, a faint oval where a circle should have been. Engineering bagged and tagged it like evidence. The QANCO wrote the serial into 3 different logs and took the chain of custody photo. Reed stepped aside with Ethan near the wing root. You picked it up before anyone else, she said, quiet but firm. That's why we're on the ground and not a smoke column on the ridge. He shook his head. We're on the ground because you listened. Yeah, she said. Because you made it impossible not to. She tapped the packet. Keep that with you. We may have to brief higher. He nodded and headed for the next tail. The desert was fully awake now, heat starting to lift, a shimmer over the runway. In the distance the mountains sat flat and patient, like they always did. He crouched at the second bird, found the same hateful stamp on the braid, and felt the same pinch in his chest. The scope slid in, the screen lit, and the tech to his left muttered, "You've got to be kidding me." "Mark it," Ethan said. "We're not betting 44 lives on a maybe." He stood, wiped his hands, and turned toward the third tail. The day had changed shape, but the job hadn't. Attention, evidence, action. One hose at a time until the line was honest again, or until everyone with a say agreed they weren't flying. And if someone up the chain wanted to argue schedule, they could meet him on the concrete and look at the crack themselves, he thought, was the only argument that mattered. He crouched at the third Guardian with the scope tech beside him, the hangar air already warming, the desert starting to shimmer at the threshold. The braid turned, the stamp showed, and there it was again, 7K214, like a bad signature on a forged check. The screen bloomed, the ferrule filled the frame, and a hairline set its little white grin across dark metal. The tech swore under his breath. 3 for 3. Ethan didn't look up. Bag it. Tag it. Chain of custody. Call it in. He straightened, wiped his palms on his trousers, and walked straight toward the op circle where Ellison, the QANCO, the civilians, and Reed stood in a knot. Collins hovered nearby, helmet hanging from 2 fingers. Third tail shows the same deformation at the crimp, the QANCO said before Ethan opened his mouth. Repeatable thermal anomaly under load. Visual confirmation of a microfracture. That's a batch defect. Ellison pinched the bridge of his nose. How many hoses from that lot are in our bin? Checking, the civilian engineer said, thumbing his tablet. Inventory says 8. 2 installed, 3 pulled, 3 on shelf. If supply chain is mirrored at other posts, this isn't just your problem. Reed turned toward the tower glass, then back. We're past a scrub. We're in reportable territory. She keyed her radio. Tower, Captain Reed. Confirm full cancel for Guardian package. Request immediate conference bridge with group, maintenance control, safety, and contractor Republic. Affirm, Tower came back. Bridge in 5. Ellison's jaw worked. He looked at Ethan, then at the line of silent helicopters. You realize what this does to our schedule? Ethan met him flat. Schedules don't attend funerals. Families do. Nobody said anything for a beat. The ops chief cleared his throat. Let's get ahead of it. We brief clean. They crowded into the conference room off the hangar, still in earshot of the ramp. Screens woke. The bridge chimed as faces populated, group ops, safety in a collared shirt, a contractor rep with 2 white lighting behind him. Reed opened with a tight, factual summary. The QANCO shared plots and thermal stills. The civilian engineer explained die wear and crimp ovalization like a prosecutor laying out a case. Ethan stood at the back wall, arms folded, a grease mark on his sleeve, letting the numbers speak. The contractor rep tried the first deflection. We're not seeing similar rates elsewhere. The QANCO slid the third image up. You are now. Safety leaned in. Risk at altitude. Primary control, the engineer said. Under coordinated turn information, a crack propagates, you lose servo authority. You might save it in a slow climb. You don't save it in a bracket at the ridge. Group ops didn't blink. Ground every tail with a 7K214 hose. Freeze issue on that lot. Initiate fleet-wide alert. Contractor, begin trace and replacement plan today. Ellison, I want your mitigation timeline by COB. Ellison nodded, all business now. Roger. Reed angled half a glance toward Ethan. Before we leave this room, we recognize the origin. Sergeant Walker identified the pattern, documented it, and escalated. That's why we're talking about hoses and not mishap notifications. Safety looked up. Duly noted. We'll capture it in the hazard report. The bridge clicked off one by one. The room exhaled. Ellison turned, hand out. It wasn't theatrical, just offered. Ethan took it. You were right, Ellison said. I was looking at green lights and forgetting what makes them green. Copy, Ethan said. He didn't have a speech. He didn't need one. Back on the ramp, the first replacement hoses arrived, fresh from a different lot, clean stamps crisp and blessedly unfamiliar. Techs moved like a practiced pit crew, old lines out, seats cleaned, torque wrenches clicking in even rhythm. Ethan hovered, eyes on threads and sealant, verifying torque stripes, signing blocks, stepping to the next airframe. Collins showed up with cold waters and a quiet, "For what it's worth, I'd rather be on the ground wishing we'd flown than in the air wishing we hadn't." Ethan cracked a grin, brief and gone. "Copy that." They finished the third swap as the sun climbed high. The QANCO ran a final sweep at operating temp. The trace lay dead flat, a boring line that looked like safety. Reed watched the scope, then the bird, then Ethan. "We'll rebuild the plan. Different window, new checks. But when we go, we'll go clean." "Make it dull," Ethan said. "Dull saves lives," she answered. An hour later, the ops chief gathered the crews by the hangar doors. Short version: defect confirmed, batch flagged, fleet notified. Today's event shifts right. We'll rebrief when every tale is verified. No hero speeches, just competent work. A murmur of assent rolled through the group. No groans. No eye rolls. Just the quiet posture of people who've stared at real stakes. Ellison stepped up, cleared his throat, and for once didn't square his shoulders like a barricade. "You all did it right." Reed called the hold. QA proved the risk. Maintenance drove the fix. Walker saw the first breadcrumb and didn't let it slide. That's the standard. They broke, scattering back to tasks that never end. Ethan drifted to the edge of the apron, where the heat haze danced and the mountains made their flat promise. He thought about the way the morning had almost gone, about a line that could have sung itself apart over the ridge, about radios filling with words no one wants to say. He closed his eyes, just for a breath, then opened them and turned back to Bay 3. The hose was new. The stripe was straight. The gauge was quiet. It wasn't glory. It was better. It was a chance to fly tomorrow and come home tomorrow night, to make a problem small before it tried to be big. And there was still work to do, because the alert was going fleet-wide, and somewhere, another crew chief was about to slide a scope under a ferrule and see that same thin grin. By afternoon the alert had a name and a number, a hazard code that meant nobody argued about it anymore. Fort Falcon's flight line shifted from launch mode to repair mode, calm but relentless. Pallets showed up with replacement hoses from a clean lot, barcodes still warm from the printer. Supply logged every box like they were tracking medicine. QA printed fresh checklists, highlighted the new crimp inspection, and taped them to tool carts. Ellison walked the line without the old stiffness, stopping to ask for proof instead of demanding speed. It wasn't an apology, but it was better than that. It was change. Ethan felt the weight in his shoulders ease, not because the work got lighter, but because the work made sense again. He moved from bird to bird, checking torque stripes, wiping seats, signing blocks, double-signing the ones with the 7K214 swap. Reed and Collins stayed visible, not hovering, just present, a reminder that the people who would strap in cared about the boring parts. When a young specialist fumbled a safety wire, Reed stepped in with a quiet, "Take your time, do it once," then stepped back and let him finish. The kid's hand steadied. Little things, but they accumulated. Phones buzzed with messages from other places: Gray Butte, Hood River, White Sands, screens lighting with photos of the same ovalide crimps, the same thermal blooms. "Thanks for the heads up," one line chief texted. "Caught 2 before run-up." Another sent a close-up of a crack so clean it looked drawn with a pencil and added, "You saved us a really bad day." Ethan didn't save those messages, but he heard them. He put the phone face down and went back to the gauge. By evening the desert light went thin and copper, and the last of the suspect hoses at Falcon lay in tagged bags inside a locked cage, evidence under chain of custody. The contractor rep arrived in person, tie loose, sleeves rolled, eyes doing math no one envied. He didn't posture. He signed for the parts, took copies of the plots, asked to walk one tail with Ethan and QA. They did the tour together, ferrule, seat, torque, trace. When they hit the new stamp on the fresh line, Ethan waited. The rep ran a finger over the numbers, nodded once, and said, "We're changing the die, and we're paying for every hour you spend." It wasn't hero talk. It was accountability. Inside ops, safety built the after-action. Bullet points, not adjectives. Finding, batch defect, crimp ovalization. Indicator, micropulse under cyclic, thermal rise at feral. Contributing factor, premature die wear, insufficient lot segregation. Mitigation, immediate fleet freeze, line replacement, revised inspection step, supplier corrective action. Reed read it, added one line about operator vigilance, and slid it back. "Make that bold," she said. The captain from group on the other end of the call said, "Already done." The 44 who'd been scrubbed filtered through the hangar in ones and twos, turning the day over in low voices. Nobody cheered. A chief warrant tapped the cowl of Bay 3 the way you'd tap a friend's shoulder and told Ethan, "My wife texted me at lunch. I told her we stood down for maintenance. She said to thank whoever made that call. She doesn't know your name." "I do. Appreciate it." Ethan nodded, a little embarrassed by the directness, and changed the subject to his bird's next due item. Ellison posted a revised sortie matrix for the week, blocks shifted, names moved, fuel loads recalculated. He penciled in, servo line post-change verification, at the top of every crew brief. "Don't skip it," he said to the room. "I want boredom on those traces." The older guys smiled at that. Dull was a compliment again. Around 2100, with 3 birds greened up and 2 waiting on parts, the line got quiet. The desert cooled fast. You could smell dust settling and hot metal giving up the day. Ethan sank onto a crate and finally opened the message from home he'd ignored at noon. His brother had sent a photo from a motor pool states away, grinning beside a Humvee, grease on his cheek. "Heard about your base," the text read. "Proud of you. Don't forget to eat." Ethan snorted, dug a protein bar out of a pocket, and tore it open. It tasted like chalk and victory. Reed wandered over, helmet bag slung, hairline damp at the edge of her cap. "You look like you could sleep standing up," she said. "I could," he admitted. "One more sign-off and I'll try a cot." She nodded at the green tags fluttering from the new lines. "We'll rebrief at 0600. Different route, spaced more, full controls check with the new step. If it's not right, we don't go." "That's the deal," he said. She hesitated, then added, "Ellison asked for your notes for the training block. He wants to build a module around it. Walker method or whatever he calls it." "Call it Don't Ignore the Pulse," Ethan said. "And make them bring pictures." Collins drifted in with a stack of printed plots. "Already queued for the projector," he said. "I underlined the boring parts." "Those are my favorite," Ethan said. At 21:30 he killed the work stand lights and listened to the hangar settle. A gull wing door clicked shut. A wrench clinked into a drawer. Somewhere a radio muttered and went silent. He stretched out on the cot by Bay 3 with his boots off and his phone face down. Sleep came in a hard drop. He woke before dawn to the old habits, the scrape of a broom, the buzz of a breaker, the low talk of a crew chief trading jokes he'd heard 100 times. He sat up, laced his boots, and stood under the same rotor disc that had lied to him yesterday. It just hung there, mute and honest, waiting to be told what to do. He put a hand on the cowl and felt the cool metal. "Be boring," he said under his breath. Then he grabbed the clipboard and headed to the brief, where a new slide waited at the top of the deck, primary control servo line, updated verification step. The room filled, chairs squeaked, pens clicked. Reed opened with a nod. "We're not here to celebrate. We're here to do it right." Heads nodded back. Ethan flipped to the last page, where his own handwriting had been scanned into the annex. He didn't love seeing it on a screen. He loved what it meant. The hardest part had passed. The fixes were in motion. The line would launch again, but only when the gauges said yes, the crimps ran true, and the quiet little pulse that had tried to get their attention was gone. The trace lay flat as a ruler, and the room didn't cheer, it exhaled. Reed capped her pen, glanced at Ethan, and nodded once. Outside, Fort Falcon was still blue with early light, the Sonoran Desert holding its breath. Crews rolled carts, wands flashed, and the 5 Guardians eased back from their spots like they were getting out of bed. The brief was shorter this time, same mission, new spacing, eyes on primaries at each gate. No one said, trust, but it hung there anyway, earned the hard way. Ethan walked the line one more time, hand on each cowl, reading torque stripes with the same patience he'd had on the worst night of the week. Collins swung by with a grin that didn't overdo it. Let's make boredom famous, he said. Please, Ethan answered. He watched Reed climb the ladder, helmet tucked under her arm, the calm of someone who knows the math pencils now. APU shriek, blades to life, radios checking in, Guardian 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, each voice clean. Taxi cleared. The stack rolled. At the hold short, Reed keyed a final note. Guardian flight, primary controls check, eyes on servos. 5 methodical callouts followed, nothing dramatic, just the sound of professionals refusing to skip the unremarkable step that keeps families whole. Tower cleared them. The formation lifted, separated wider than yesterday's plan, noses tipping north toward the ridge that had lived rent-free in Ethan's head. He stood at the edge of the apron, headset down around his neck, watching discs turn into coins and coins into dots. Ops fed him numbers, temps nominal, torque nominal, no chatter on the line. The QA/NCO leaned beside him, both of them squinting into the bright. Flat traces, the NCO said. My favorite color. Ethan didn't answer right away. He listened for something that wasn't there, the tiny hitch he'd felt in his hands at 2 in the morning, the quiet warning buried under noise. Nothing. Just the steady thump of machines doing what they were built to do. The flight went long enough to prove a point but not long enough to tempt fate. They ran the route, hit the gates, made the turn at the ridge with textbook spacing, and never gave the ridge a reason to learn their names. When they came back, the Guardians settled one by one, rotors glazing down, dust curling off the pads in obedient halos. Reed popped her canopy and slid down, boots hitting concrete with a soft thud. She pulled her helmet, swept a stray hair back, and offered Ethan the look he hadn't let himself want, satisfied, not surprised. Boring, she said. Best word we've got, he said. By noon, the alert had bled across 3 states. Photos from other ramps showed the same ovalized crimps sealed in bags, the same fresh stamps on new lines, the same flat plots taped to clipboards. Ellison pushed the training module live, don't ignore the pulse in block caps on slide 1, then walked the hangar without barking. He stopped at a young specialist's cart, pointed to the new inspection step, and asked, show me how you know. The kid did. Ellison smiled, small but real. Good, he said. Teach the next guy. Safety wrapped the hazard report with names attached to the right pieces. Reed's call, QA's proof, engineering's cause, Ellison's mitigation, and Ethan's first breadcrumb noted in black and white. No confetti. No speeches. Just a record you could hand to someone 6 months from now and say, do it like this. The contractor rep sent a message from a factory floor with a new die in frame, a machinist's hands in sight, the caption short, implemented. The kind of photo that means more than a press release. The ceremony came a week later, not because anyone wanted pageantry, but because the system insists on marking the difference between luck and judgment. The parade ground was clean and hot, flags snapping, boots aligned. Ethan stood where they told him, uniform pressed flat, palms dry because he'd wiped them twice. Reed was on his left, Collins behind, Ellison a step off, jaw easy for once. The colonel kept it brief. Vigilance. Duty. 44 lives. He pinned the medal without a speech longer than the morning checks. Applause came and went like a gust. After, a warrant with Gray at the temples shook Ethan's hand and said, my daughter's got a game tonight. It was nothing on paper and everything in truth. Ethan nodded and didn't trust his voice, so he said, "Good field lights out there," and the man laughed because he knew what was being said underneath. The bass hummed back to normal, only not quite. The whiteboard in Ellison's office had a new row that never moved: primary control, servo line, verify. The tool carts kept fresh checklists laminated and smudged. Flight leads added, flat trace confirmed, to their roll calls. The next class of mechanics got the module on day 1. The first slide showed a photo of a faint crescent of sheen under a fuselage and the caption, "If you see this, it's talking to you. Listen." That night, when the hangar went soft and the desert cooled, Ethan sat on his crate with the lights down to amber and called his brother back. They didn't say much. A joke about chow, a complaint about boots, a promise to meet halfway when the calendars stopped fighting. Before he hung up, his brother said, "You did right." Ethan stared at Bay 3's new line, clean stamp catching a scrap of light, and answered, "We did." He stood, walked the length of the Guardians, and let his hand trail along each skin, a quiet inventory he'd make 1,000 more times. At the door he paused and looked back. The machines didn't feel anything about the men and women who kept them honest. They just reflected whatever was put into them. Tonight, they reflected check marks and flat plots in a base that had learned to respect the whisper before the shout. Ethan killed the switch, stepped into the Sonoran dark, and breathed the dry night air. Heroics were for posters. This was something else, work that nobody saw until it failed, work that kept 44 names from becoming a list. He tucked his hands into his pockets and started toward the barracks, the sound of a distant generator fading behind him, the lesson lodged where it belonged: pay attention, speak up, make it boring, and everybody goes home.